turn it over to Jennifer and the panel and you, the participants, to have that dialogue about what the post-COVID world looks like. Thank you very much. Jennifer, it's all yours.
Thanks, Doug. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. I'm very pleased to introduce the panel speakers. Dave Willis from Air Coach Lines, Angie Ricci from Angel Tours and Entertainment, John Crowley from Coach Canada, and Lynn Matthews from Parkinson Coach. Is everybody hearing an echo? Yes. Just nod if you are. Okay, so am I. It's very distracting. All right, the first question to the panelists, and as you know, we went out to members and asked for questions in advance. So we're going to cover off a few of those today. The first question to the panelists, and I'll open the floor to anyone who'd like to answer first. What can we do together as an industry to alleviate fears around motor coach travel? Dave, maybe why don't we start with you? Angie, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking it would probably be great and certainly show some solidarity if we came up with a collective solution and implemented it all across Ontario and Canada, where all coach companies were going to adapt the same practices. That would show the public that we are united in solving the problem. We are united and care for their well-being and the well-being of our staff. I really think that collectively that would show our strength.
That's great. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
Sorry, I was muted. I agree with Angie there, and the fact that we need to go beyond just the coach operators to make it a norm across the entire industry, which needs to be promoted from all aspects, whether it's the coach operator, the tour operator, suppliers, or whatever it may be. But we all are in it for one common goal, and I believe that's to gain confidence of our consumer. The more we can educate and put confidence into our passengers, the more profitable everybody's going to be. I think we'll see more and more passengers getting back on our buses if we can gain that confidence level that we're safe and it's a good way to travel.
That's great. That's great. John or Lynn, did you have anything to add?
Sorry, I was on mute. I just agree with it. I think that we need to send some message and have some type of platform, whether that's through our website, that we have some type of written literature or something that we can direct our clients to, that makes them feel confident that it's okay to get on a bus and travel on a bus, and that's a good, you know, they're some of their fears. As soon as you get over that, I think that they'll be back and they'll want to travel.
Great. Okay, John, I don't want to cut you off, but if you don't have anything to add, I'll just move on. All right. The next question is, what are you doing specifically to encourage people and make sure that they are comfortable and ready to get back on the bus? So Angie, maybe I'll start with you and ask if you could speak a little bit to anything that you're doing specifically.
So are you talking about what we're doing in the way of PPE as well?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, one thing we did take on was we started to poll both our drivers and our passengers. We went back to the group leaders to ask them, to let them know we were preparing to implement mandatory temperature checks both at the pickup and at the return of the destination, because they could have got a fever, they could have become ill during the 4, 5, 8 hours that they're out on the road. And the implementation of mandatory wearing of masks in a coach. Wearing of masks in a coach will allow us to increase our passenger count. We won't be restricted to the social distancing, or certainly that's my interpretation of what's going on. And if the TTC can do it, then I think that we can too. And so when polling those charter groups, they were very supportive. Actually, the group leaders were telling me that they were going to rattle their own passengers who resisted or whatever. We went back and just said, would your people be offended if we wanted to take temperatures, and would they be offended if we insisted on masks? And all the groups responded the same way: no, we would not, and we would welcome it. So I think if they want to get out there, they're going to comply with that request. In addition to the cleaning, of course, we got some fog machines. I'll show you a little. I have one right here beside me. So this one here plugs into the AC outlets at the back of the seat. This one here is called a Fogmaster Junior. It has a short plug, but you can run an extension cord. And we have a solvent that we use called Vital Oxide. It is a hospital grade. I can give everybody the details on it after. It's a hospital grade disinfectant recognized by Health Canada to kill the bacteria from COVID-19 and all, SARS, and there's a variety of listings. It actually shows you it has a DIN number, so a drug identification number, on the Health Canada website. And this device here, we're going to use in between. So in addition to the cleaning, we'll use it in between groups. It takes 5 minutes to kill the bacteria, and it's said to last 7 days. So, how much you want to dispense, of course, and the routine habits you want to use would be up to you. But it's $70 a gallon and does approximately 4,000 square feet. So if you start converting that into, and we use it in the workspace too. When I come in, I just go around all the bathrooms, anywhere. It's not friendly with paper, so you would not have paper out, but we spread it around everywhere, and it's just in addition to.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Angie. Maybe we'll move to you, Lynn. What are you doing specifically to encourage people, make sure that they're comfortable and ready to get back on the bus?
So we've created a kind of a train the trainer. It's about 15 minutes. So you're welcome to share that out to anybody that wants it. It's on YouTube. And we have put that out so that our cleaners are all using the same standards. And from when you walk in the bus to any of the rocking, the windows, the driver's area, any of those things. We've also put together a publication for a school bus and a coach that we can send out so that they know that the whole bus is being cleaned. And it's about giving them confidence. So we did a little cookie run, and we call it, and their staff was not interested in taking the TTC. They were just nervous, but they wanted to have them working. And we kind of sent it to them, and they were happy to do that. And they in turn asked us if the drivers would also check in with their company when they arrived, which our drivers had no problem with, so that they were given reassurance. So I think it's about partnering with your client as well as we partner all together and making them feel comfortable.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Dave, can we move to you now? What are you doing specifically to encourage people and ensure that they're comfortable and ready to get back on a bus? Dave, you're on mute. See your lips moving, but we don't hear anything.
We've pretty much done what the rest are doing. We've been looking at different foggers and trying to get some of that stuff is almost impossible. You listen to some of the coach manufacturers and some of the products they have available, which they've done a spectacular job of investing money in research and development on how we can better keep our buses for the future. But again, a lot of that product is, not available to, months down the road type of thing. So, which is maybe not going to be an issue, but, we're basically doing the same. We've come up with a one-pager or summary of what we're doing. We think that's a little better than a real long lengthy presentation, but just a quick summary to our passengers of trying to gain their confidence again. That's what I keep going back to.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Dave. And John, maybe I can turn it over to you. What are you doing specifically to encourage people and make sure that they're comfortable and ready to get back on the bus?
Jen, I don't know that John was able to join.
Oh, well, that would explain why he's so quiet.
Yeah.
Okay. That's unfortunate. Okay, well, we'll move on.
Actually, Jen, before we move on, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Angie mentioned something, and I had an experience with that myself this morning. The idea of taking temperatures before people get on the coach. To be honest, I had to go to the dentist first thing this morning at 8 o'clock. And before they would let me in, they took my temperature. So I actually asked them how much does one of those handheld devices cost, and theirs cost about $80, including tax. They showed me the receipt for it. It was actually very helpful in talking about it. Does anybody think there's any value in that? And I asked that on two levels. I think we would all agree it probably has limited actual benefit in terms of preventing the spread. Like most of the people who have a fever or who are sick are probably not going to get on a bus anyways. They should be smart enough not to leave home. And secondly, a lot of the spread is going to be from people who are pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic. So they won't necessarily show up with it. But it does make people feel a lot more comfortable, that simple act of having somebody. So there's sort of two levels. Does it actually help the spread? But more importantly, does it help instill confidence to have the driver just zap everybody's forehead? It literally takes a split second to do. I don't know. I just wanted to jump in, even though I'm not a panelist, and follow up on what Angie said. Does that have value for people? Does that make sense?
Doug, if you don't mind, can I say something here? You guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I picked up 3 temp sensors just to be ready for, because primarily, yes, I believe it's for reassurance. That's number one. You gotta show like you're putting steps forward and you're taking this seriously. But second of all, I'm in the casino business, and I know the steps that they're going to be taking will be exactly the same thing. So you want a continuous check from the beginning to the end with everybody on the same procedure. You don't want to be bringing people that are, they might even put it in, implement that anyways, that we need to do that. But I certainly don't see, I bought 3 that was $100 each. I certainly, for that investment, I'd rather have it now than find out later on. Yes, you need it, and now everyone's scrambling and it's harder to get, and I'm ready to start my business 2 weeks from now, and I gotta wait a month or 6 weeks from Amazon or wherever I'm getting it to get it in. So that's the value I find in it, to be hit for the $300 hit. It's no brainer.
Agreed. The other thing we need to think about is, in a motor coach, we're one of the services that can actually say that, and of course it depends on if you have a manifest of the passengers that are riding with you. So in the charter environment, maybe we're going to ask the group leaders to make sure they have a contact list of all the people riding, but we are in a position to offer somewhat of contact tracing, and by having a temperature helps prevent and manage that. So maybe they woke up in the morning, came to the bus, didn't have a temperature when they headed to the bus, they're feeling fine, and they don't know they have a fever now until we tell them that they're 37.5, which is the no, you're not coming on the bus mark. And that would have done us some good by preventing them, giving comfort to the rest of the passengers, but letting them know too that you have a fever that you might not have known you had. And on the return, if we do it on the return, we're also knowing that maybe they had a fever that didn't present at pickup, but 4 or 8 hours later it's presented, and now they know they have a fever as well too, which then brings, gives them some caution to go address the situation. It doesn't mean it's COVID related, but at least we've done what we can, and we actually have that person's name and telephone number. So if something did come out later, all the passengers on the bus will appreciate the extra effort you make to protect them. And if you think of yourself as a consumer, so for those of us that have a lot of seniors as our guests, and we're all in that business, if they're being influenced by the people in their household who are saying, well, if you're going to go on a bus, then you need to check for this, that, and that. But if they find a company that has this, that, and that So 4 things as opposed to the 3 things that all the other bus companies are doing, and this company's doing 4 or 5 things, 2 extra things. Their families may influence them to ride with that company because they've gone 2 extra steps to provide some peace of mind and sense of protection. So, you know, I always try to pretend I'm the passenger, and what's my reaction going to be to the protocols the bus companies are going to put in place. And I'd say, yeah, if that company was going to take 2 more steps, chances are I'm going to be on their steps in their bus.
That's great. All really good points. Thanks, Angie. If we could, I'd like to move on to a question around the safety protocols with respect to the washroom on a motor coach. And Lynn, I know that you had some thoughts around wanting to talk about disinfecting versus cleaning. So maybe we can just start with you and then we can move to the other panelists.
Okay, I think I'm off mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So we have had a little bit of work just because we have delivered some farm workers. So that's our direct experience. And I just want to highlight there's definitely a difference for us, we found, between disinfecting the bus and cleaning the bus. And the safety or the reassurance that people have felt, and that's mostly from our drivers, because we definitely social distance our drivers from any of the passengers. Disinfecting a bus versus cleaning a bus. Cleaning a bus, when they get on a bus and it's spick and span and it's labor intensive, yes, 100%, but it definitely gives the drivers the reassurance. We all struggle for drivers, so I'm just I think that we have to just be conscious of that a bus is great if you just say it's disinfected, but it's not cleaned. And people definitely have more reassurance if a bus is disinfected and cleaned versus just one. And in the temperature thing, just from my driver's experience, I'm not sure our drivers would test everybody. Maybe if there was a self-test that people did on their own, yes, they'd be happy to do that. But I'm not sure that, if you go back to the public health website and they talk about what is direct contact, direct contact is having less than a 5-minute conversation and being less than 6 feet away from someone. So if a driver says, yes, I have not had direct contact with somebody, even if they have had COVID, or even if they do test positive with the trace testing, that they can feel confident that they have not had direct contact. And that's, the health unit doesn't talk much about touch surfaces. I kind of put a call out to them and had a conversation with them, and they're not as worried about touch surfaces as they are about a confined space, not wearing a mask, and less than 6 feet apart for longer than 5 minutes. So they kind of have that criteria, and I think that we might be some benefit to jump on some of the bandwagon for what they already are doing and what they're already making the public feel comfortable with, because then we're not reinventing the wheel, and we're saying we're doing those same things as well.
Okay, and then in terms of the washroom and keeping the washroom clean or disinfected or using it or disallowing its use, do you have thoughts on that, or a policy or position on that now?
We currently clean and disinfect every one of our buses. So people that do get on a coach, we have let them use the washroom. But that means that there's higher amounts of PPE used when our cleaners come back and clean the bus. But rarely do majority of our movements happen in a school bus world. So because the school buses are much easier to clean. A coach has much more, it's just much more complex than a school bus.
I think that when it comes to the washroom, Jennifer, that this is something we're going to have to work on as an entire group. I think limiting the use of the washroom is going to be very, very important, because like Lynn said, we can disinfect or we can, sterilize that washroom. But the very first time it's used, that procedure basically is thrown out the door. So I think as the industry moves forward, yes, washrooms are available for emergencies, but emergencies only, because I really truly think we're going to have to push the part that very limited use, because we, on a multi-day trip or even a long day trip, the driver can't be responsible for cleaning the washroom several times throughout the day. We just don't have time for that. But on the other hand, it's you from one passenger to the next. I don't know how we're going to control that. So it's going to be a very, very limited use in my eyes, the washroom itself.
Thanks,
You know,
Dave.
I'm a little tense about the bathroom. When I think about having to, I sort of feel like I would rather have my passengers be using the bus bathroom as opposed to getting off and exposing them to a public bathroom and then bringing those back into the cabin space where we've already pre-qualified the guests traveling with us, not having temperatures or whatever, and they're already wearing masks. Now we stop somewhere at a public place, we expose them all to whatever's going on in that public place that we don't control. And we know it's in everyone's best interest. So the people that are operating that public bathroom at whatever pit stop we're at are going to do their best to clean it as well too. But I'm just hesitant about, are we safer within our own cabin? And yes, of course, bathroom for emergency only. But I don't agree with no bathroom at all, because people are going to have emergencies. So yeah, I'm on the fence about that, which is why I really love the idea of the disinfectant. The passenger as well too is going to make a decision as to, do I really need to go to the bathroom that bad? Because once I'm in there, I'm going to be at risk or expose myself. And maybe for the multi-day trip, somebody shares that responsibility with the driver. Is there any, the bathroom, because of what it's made out of, you could spray it down with a disinfectant and just let it run down the walls if you had to, and then mop up the bottom and dispose of everything, because it doesn't have any fabric in the bathroom, right? It's all hard surface. So, and you don't need to have a fogging machine. I found this stuff also works with those sprayers that have a wide nozzle, or the garden things where you're either killing bugs or I don't know what they're called. You could use your disinfectant, you could dispense it with one of those as well. You can get creative and find other things when you can't get the fogging machines. Just a thought.
Thanks, Angie. I think we have John on the line now. Is that right? No, maybe not. Okay. So quick note on the washroom thing. I think we're going to have some further conversation on that. I agree. It's somewhere that we haven't really landed in terms of having an industry-wide policy. But I did want to note that the Quebec Federation shared with me yesterday that as an association, industry-wide, their members have agreed the washrooms will not be allowed to be used on coaches. So it's an interesting position that they've taken. By no means am I suggesting that we take the same position, because Quebec will have different needs, risks, exposures than we do here in Ontario, and across Canada it will be different. So we have to find what works for us. Moving on, the next question has to do with passenger size limitations and social distancing. Will there be any limits in terms of passengers allowed on the coaches? So I'll just throw that open to the panel, who'd like to start with that question.
I think that when it comes to size limitations of the loads, we have to work with each customer individually. It becomes a situation where you could be doing a family reunion where several of your passengers all live in the same household, and they're willing to all wear face coverings and that type of thing. So at that point, you could maybe almost fill the motor coach. Whereas if you're doing something that you know nothing about your passengers, you might be reluctant to do that and maybe look at limiting the amount of passengers that would be on board.
And I think that's really where we've landed as an industry. When you look at our motor coach cleaning protocol documents, it includes working on a case-by-case basis with our customers because everybody's needs will be different. The group will be different. Even the regions that they travel to or not will be different. So I think that's sort of where we've landed as an industry, but I know it is something that keeps coming up. So did anyone have anything else to add on that point or maybe a differing view?
I'm going to take the position that as long as they agree to take the temperature and wear a mask, and bring their own mask, and we'll have all of that we will have shared that communication with them before they arrive at the pickup. Then they're accepting responsibility themselves. No one's forcing them to come on the trip, so they understand that they want to go on the trip subject to these conditions. And everybody who arrives on that bus, if 50 people show up, that means they want to go and they accepted the temperature taking, and they accepted the wearing the mask. So if 50 people show up and want to go and they meet those conditions, we're going to take them and we're going to take them home, and the rest will dictate itself, because once they get off the bus, they're going to be in yet another environment too. And they can't say that they got COVID on our bus. They can't blame that on anybody. And the reality is that they made a conscious adult decision to take the trip. No one's pressuring them to do that. So we're going to allow them, unless we're told that we can't exceed a number, we're going to allow them to do that. We are also going to have their names and telephone numbers so that we can provide contact tracing should something come out, something negative come out of that as a result.
Okay, and just for the purposes of the discussion, I wanted to also note, and thank you for that, Angie and Dave, and sorry, Lynn, if you wanted to jump in there, but I wanted to note for the group that in British Columbia, the province has actually said that it is safe to ride on a motor coach. You can have a full motor coach, 56 passengers, as long as everyone is wearing a face mask. So there will be differences again across Canada in various jurisdictions, as well as based on customer need, and I think we need to be open to that.
And I just want to add that the customers are, we also have to think about the drivers, because as I say, we struggle to get drivers that feel comfortable doing those trips. So if I couldn't get a driver to drive 56 people, but I could get a driver to drive 50 people, because that's where their comfort level is. And they say that the first couple of, I don't know if you can hear me, the first couple of rows need to be separated, then that might be a different situation.
Okay, that's a great point. Thanks, Lynn. The next question is whether or not the coach will be equipped with hand sanitizer on board. So I'll just throw that out there to the panel.
I can speak for us that we have hand sanitizer in the bathroom and when you first board the bus, but it's been a struggle to get it.
We've had that on the bus door. Lynn, is that where your hand sanitizer is as well too? Right at the bus entrance? Yeah, that was all pre-COVID that we had that.
And in the bathroom.
And in the bathroom, yes, and in the bathroom. It would be interesting. I don't know if somebody said it in one of our recent conversations, but maybe how do you get the sanitizer pump on the outside door of the bathroom? Because that could be helpful before they're touching handles and stuff like that, because the outside door of the bathrooms, of course, are usually fabric. Maybe we modify that so that you can put a pump there. Dave's laughing. That would be, hand sanitizer in, hand sanitizer out. Now we've added some precaution to the use of the bathroom.
Dave or John, if you're on the line, any further comments on that?
Sorry, for our fleet, we have we had it at the top of the stairs in the past, and we've recently just added the dispensers on the door as you enter as well. So we're the same as the rest in the bathroom and on the door.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question is, will drivers have a protective shield around them? Will drivers be wearing face masks?
I pulled up my drivers to find out what their comfort level was going to be. were, because we're already practicing wearing a face mask just while they're off. They're saying, yes, I want to wear a face mask. We have got them face shields as well too, so that they could wear, if they have to take temperatures, they can put on a face shield to again prevent them from exposure to droplets. All the drivers are willing to do this because, well, my drivers are eager to get back to work. So, and they're not giving us a bunch of resistance, but Prevost manufacturer as well has also come up with 2 different types of driver barriers. One was a big standard that they implemented. I think Greyhound runs those ones, and it's like a full door system. But Prevost has also come up now with a shorter version of that, shall we say, that's just going to be a piece of plexiglass that comes around the driver's face area. So when the driver is sitting, it would somewhat come down the side. And so not obstruct visibility, and certainly provide additional protection. So we're just waiting for those to come into Mississauga, and we're going down to see them. But Prevost's doing that. They've been doing some wonderful things.
I can speak for ours, and the people that we have been involved in picking up, they're having quite a few screenings, and there's social distancing between us and the passengers, and those passengers are coming from a different country, and they're going to self-isolate anyways. So they don't social distance between each other, but we social distance between the driver. Now, the feedback that I've had from our drivers is they would want more PPE. So I don't know, like most of the stores where you have a face shield that goes across the top, and so it wouldn't just your peripheral vision wouldn't be impacted, and that they would want to drive with that compared to wearing a mask. A lot of our drivers say that, that once the sun starts beating down on the window coming in, that it would be a really hot drive if they had to wear a mask for the whole time.
Again, without a standard being set forth by government, we have come up with what we classify as a sneeze shield that we're experimenting with on a couple of our units right now. That is not a permanent fixture, and we're trying to go along the lines of, depending on our load capacity and whether or not the front seats need to be occupied, that shield can be removed so that the viewing for the passengers is not impeded, and that style of thing. So it's questionable whether it can be left up or taken down, and that would be up to the discretion of the group and the driver.
Dave, is that something that you made yourself with your company, or is that the manufacturer providing that?
We made it ourselves.
And will it be removable?
Yes, it is. It just snapped into place along the top of the luggage bay and then behind the driver. Mm-hmm. And it conforms to the shape of the modesty panel. So, and it's clear, it's perfectly clear. You can see through it, no problem. But we're just worried about different groups and some high profile customers are saying, we don't want that. We're going to sit. They may only have 20 or so passengers, and how some of those coaches get and so on that don't sit in the front row or the second row, and they want to see the TV and they don't want anything in their vision of seeing out the windshield. We have all kinds of different clients we all carry, and we were just trying to implement something that's good for everybody.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave, Lynn, and Angie. The next question is whether or not you're requiring your passengers to wear face masks. If so, are you providing the masks/face coverings? How are you enforcing usage? What do you do if a passenger shows up without a mask or face covering? So maybe you could just throw that open to the panelists.
Sorry, I feel like I'm hogging it. I feel like I'm playing a TV game here and hitting the buzzer. I wait for Dave and wait for Lynn to wait for their microphone to go off, and then Anyhow, we are asking them, we think that by now most people have their own masks, so we are recommending they bring their own, but we will have some for, you know, we don't want somebody to show up and say, I didn't know, or I dropped it or something. We don't want to get into the habit of providing it ongoing, but we will have some disposable masks so that they can board. And then, you know, they will get a reminder that try to do their best to get their own in the future, because that could get really costly. As we all know, people may turn around and go, oh, I'll just show up and pretend I lost it again because I know that they're going to give us one because I saw them give it to the other people, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in. Thanks, Angie, because we did have our panel call on Tuesday, just for the rest of the group. And John from Coach Canada, who I know is listening, but unfortunately is not able to participate, he shared with us that they're doing the same thing, that they're encouraging passengers to bring their own face coverings, wear their own face coverings, but in absolute emergency, they will provide something for them, but that's not something that they really want to get into the habit of doing. Dave and Lynn, did you have anything to add?
Any passenger that has come that we have picked up, they have always had face masks on because we're picking them up from the airport, and the airport requires face masks. Our drivers, again, are using them to load and unload passengers, but they're not necessarily driving with them because they just found them very hot.
Before we move on to the next question, Angie, I think you're sharing your screen. Can you just hit the box with the X? Right next to your mute button. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Dave, did you have anything to add with respect to face coverings for passengers?
No, I didn't.
Okay, no problem. Let's move on. We've got still a lot of ground to cover. With respect to luggage handling, has anything changed in terms of who will handle the luggage, how the luggage will be handled? The drivers wearing gloves, or the passengers expected to handle their own luggage? Maybe we could ask you to comment on that.
At this point, we haven't changed our luggage handling procedures. We are going to highly recommend to our drivers that they wear gloves. I don't think that's going to be mandatory. They will have masks on, but it's going to be recommended they wear gloves, but not mandatory.
We've asked that the passengers handle their own luggage, and all of our drivers have gloves, new gloves for every time they go out.
We'll probably do the same as what Dave is doing, where we have the drivers just wear gloves and continue on. Some people can't manage their own luggage because, you know, a lot of the seniors may have some difficulty. So, and I know that, sorry, I shouldn't say I know, when speaking to our drivers, they were of the same sense as that part of their job is not going to be so disruptive as long as the passenger is not standing there beside them. So maybe the protocol would be, you know, stay away from the driver, let him pull the luggage, let him or her pull the luggage out, put it, you know, on the sidewalk or wherever it is you're unloading, and then only when he leaves should they go and grab it. That might be some way to solve that problem, right? They're still being distanced from the driver, let the driver unload what he can, have the passenger stay away and collect it in a social distance manner.
Okay. Thank you for that. The next question we know is a hot topic with the new regulations, or I should say with the new policies for additional cleaning that the coach companies are taking on. How will this affect the driver's hours of service in planning itineraries? So if I could throw that out to the group.
I think that the itineraries are going to have to be adjusted to give the drivers time to especially on a multi-day trip. On a day trip, I'm not exactly sure what the responsibilities are going to be of the driver. As you know, when we stop at a venue, every itinerary is developed differently. We stop at a venue, maybe a theater or something, the driver has all kinds of time to work his way through the vehicle, cleaning or sterilizing or wiping down or whatever we feel is needed to be done. But there are other itineraries that are jam-packed and the group is only stopping for, say, 30 minutes, a lunch break, dinner break, or washroom break. And during those 30 minutes, the driver has to be off duty to gain his rest time. So for the drivers to be able to walk through and do a quick cleansing or whatever we deem is needed to be done is all going to come out of their duty day. And in order to do that, and again, it goes back to working together as the industry as a whole on where we set those needs, our policies or procedures, or what we deem needs to be done during that day. If we deem that everything needs to be sterile every time people get on and off the bus, that's all going to take time, and that's going to limit our itineraries greatly. And I don't think from either side or any side of the industry we can afford to risk the safety of our staff or passengers, but we also don't want to take a ton of time out of our itineraries to minimize what the value the customer's getting at the end of the day.
Dave, I also think too, the need for social distancing is going to affect the way we plan tours. The tours, the hammer tours, the getting most bang out of your buck, these extensive days, I think those are going to be gone, or certainly should be gone in the eye of the tour planner. Social distancing and all the extra little things that we have to do to protect everybody, driver and passenger included, we really need to think about how we plan those tours to allow for all of that. And the expectation that people would tour the way they used to tour, whether it's the school itinerary or, a church pilgrimage, they really need to look at that. And that has to be part of their responsibility when they're planning to allow for all these extra things that we have to put in place now to keep everybody safe.
I think to add what I was saying is the fact that the industry has thousands of motor coach drivers out there, and every one of them cleans to a different standard. And everybody has their favorite driver. Everybody has their favorite group and type of thing. And we all know that different drivers keep their workplaces in different conditions than others. That we have particular drivers that are, excuse my language, but anal about the vehicle they're in, and they are very particular, and that's the way they keep their vehicle. So, when a group gets on or off that particular motor coach, they're going to feel very confident on the condition of the vehicle, whereas there are many other motor coach operators out there that don't go to that extent. So, we can train, we can develop, but it won't be to the same standard of our cleaning staff that we can watch every day. We're overlooking, we see the vehicles in our yard, but when a vehicle's on the road, we have no control over that. And everybody has different standards. And it's going to be very difficult to say this is what needs to be done, because I use the example with my staff is we used to require the drivers to sweep the vehicles upon return to our yard. And some of them would be impeccable when you went to check them. The next one, you'd still collect a bag of garbage off the floor, but that's that individual standard. So it's going to be very difficult to be able to sit back and say, this is exactly what we're doing at every point, and it takes this amount of time. And so so it's going to be very difficult to do that.
Dave, I was thinking when you mentioned that, so I just started planning to do some meetings with our crew, and and I had a couple of meetings already with a select few of our drivers who actually met that standard of being anal about the cleanliness of the coach. And it's my opinion that they're going to be our starting crew. Those drivers are going to be our starting crew, and they're going to set the standard to return the remaining drivers to the workforce. They're going to be instrumental in setting that standard in addition to what the cleaners are already doing. And I think now more than ever is a time where you're going to need to do that. And if you have that driver, certainly so many of my drivers are so eager to come back to work. And they're understanding, and I'm making it very, very clear to them that we have to get this right from the get-go, or we could be parked again. So it's going to take us collectively together to change our attitude about what our job description may or may not be. And most of them have been on board with absolutely, we're going to do whatever we need to do. So crew one is starting with all the guys who not only have the stellar driving skills, but were already had a standard before COVID. And I would recommend, I think there's nothing wrong with that. And the other guys that are waiting in queue may change their mind about what they think is important or not, but they're going to want it clean for themselves. You know, the driver is going to be more concerned now about the cleanliness and sanitization and disinfectant of the coach for their own care.
Those are great points. I'm cognizant of time, and I know we're getting sort of towards the end of our allotted time, but also towards the end of our pre-planned questions. So I'm going to roll the next two questions into each other, and then hopefully we can get through everything before the hour is up. The next question is, how do you anticipate handling cleaning protocols on multi-day trips? Is organizing the cleaning of a coach something that a tour operator should incorporate to trip planning and costs? The thinking here being presumably the coach will have to be sent somewhere to a cleaning facility for proper cleaning. Is that true or not? And then the follow-up to this is, are you anticipating adding a COVID-19 surcharge to offset the added costs and resources for cleaning? So I throw that out to the group.
I can come back to, again, what I just commented on and different standards with different staff members. And there has to be a protocol. Obviously, we need to protect our staff. We need to protect our passengers. We need to protect our clients. And in saying that, yeah, it's going to take time. But again, setting that standard, we all know in the motor coach industry that we just can't drop our group and run down to the corner car wash center and get our vehicle sanitized. We can't even get our toilets dumped in most cities, for saying that. We've added auxiliary tanks and so on for that reason. So it's not a simple thing of, dropping our group at 7:30 p.m. and allotting an hour for the motor coach operator to run down the street, get the bus cleaned up and come back and parked, and he's done his day. That's, we go to too many different remote locations. We go to too many different off the beaten track venues that's going to be next to impossible. So we've got to come up with a program, a policy, and a procedure on how we can do it in-house and work with the operator, whether it's a guide or a group leader or whoever may be in charge of the group for that particular trip, to come up with suggestions and ideas on what level we need to cleanse that bus, whether it's during the day at a venue or in the evening on a multi-day.
Lynn, sorry, Lynn, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I was going to say, as with every other part of every industry, not just tourism, it's baby steps. We're talking about a 3-day trip or a 5-day trip, but to get people comfortable with the new procedures or the new ways is a 1-day trip, right? Just to wherever it's going, and then once they feel comfortable on a 1-day trip, so some of it's going to be a learning process for us as we go through this, and this isn't working. Well, this will, you know, you get some feedback from the customers, you're out there experiencing it, and then you're going to have to adjust your itinerary. You're going to have to adjust what's happening just because it's a change, and you don't have time to do that, or the driver has second thoughts and goes and does a couple trips and goes, I've changed my mind, or the customers do. So it's a partnership with, like, working together to find what's going to be the solution today and then what's going to be the solution next week, because everything's going to change.
Those are great points. Angie, did you have something to add? Oh, I think you're on mute. I saw you shake your head no.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I realized I was on mute. I was just echoing what Dave and Lynn had said already.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we're getting close to wrap up, but the final question is, are there any other considerations tour operators should be aware of? And I think we touched on some of these a little bit. We touched on the fact that drivers will have higher personal standards for cleaning. This could factor into trip planning and cleaning protocols. Drivers will have concerns about their own health. We touched on that. We also talked about how we could work together as an industry a little bit. There was some discussion the other day about perhaps working on a one-pager for the tour operator segment of the membership. Would anybody like to talk about that a little bit more?
I think just to add to that, Jennifer, I can't emphasize the fact of, you know, these conversations we're going to have over the next 6 weeks with different segments within the industry. But I think it all comes back to working together to educate the public, to gain confidence, to get back on a motor coach, to travel as a group. And I can't stress that enough to, you know, we need to work on our marketing. We need to work on getting the word out there to gain that confidence for passengers to return to group travel.
Hi, it's Marty. I just wanted to comment on the tour ops. The council is working on a document. They've actually have reviewed what the coach operators put together, and they're coming in with their ideas, and then we're going to send it out to the general audience of tour operators. So they very much agree that there should be a document in place too with what they're proposing, and it will help in, it's going to be something that they can send to their tour groups too, to help them in the fact that everybody's looking out for everyone's safety.
Okay, thanks for that, Marty. I know that the last point that we had discussed on our pre-panel call the other day is the issue of what happens if a passenger starts to feel ill throughout the course of a multi-day or multi-stop trip. And of course, we need to sort of know where the government stands in terms of a person who is exhibiting COVID-like symptoms. Do we then need to encourage everyone on the motor coach to self-isolate, or is it simply a matter of notifying the passengers that someone with COVID-like symptoms has been identified and having the other passengers self-monitor? So Doug and I are working on getting an answer from public health. I was able to confirm yesterday that from the federal perspective, they have no jurisdiction over interprovincial or domestic travel. So this is a provincial matter. But I think it is a question that if the province and public health is not prepared to say, you know, what happens if somebody exhibits COVID-like symptoms, you know, obviously remove them from the coach, send them home, and everyone else self-monitor. The question becomes to the coach operators and the tour operators, how do we want to handle that as an industry? You know, remove that person and their family, send them home. Who covers the cost for their travel home? It did come up that, you know, ideally it would be their health insurance provider or their travel insurance provider. But there are some issues with that too, because as we all know, travel insurance is right now not covering anyone with COVID-like symptoms. So this is just another barrier that has been identified to recovery. We need people to be traveling again. And if people think that they could be out of pocket if they exhibit symptoms and are removed from their trip, that could certainly be prohibitive as an industry. So a conversation I think that we need to have as a group, even more as we move down the road toward recovery. Any comments from the panel on that?
I would say the only thing that I want to say is that, so we recently had an employee who was possibly, or his family was possibly going to test positive for COVID. And I've had a long conversation with the health unit, and it's all about direct contact. And I think I mentioned that before. So it's about what we can do proactively. And again, that's no mask, less than a 5-minute conversation, a direct conversation that's less than 6 feet, sort of, with somebody. So when they do contact tracing, I think that we're on the right mark as far as going back to the public health and seeing what they are looking for and what their standards are, and that will change, but depending what stage we go through. But it's about, we have no issue. We at Parkinson have no issues because we proactively were doing what was needed. But if you're not there, it's really hard to kind of do catch up after the fact. So we want to be sure that what we're going to do, that we're working together so everybody feels comfortable. So if there is a case or an outbreak or whatever the situation is, that you know how to handle it and you're not sort of you're being proactive about it.
I think that, again, going back to working with your clients and on a case-by-case basis here, it's a little different if you're running a local shuttle service to the casino where somebody, might show symptoms and it's a quick trip home. It's compared to somebody that's doing a multi-day West Coast tour and it's day 12 and they're in Calgary or Vancouver or halfway across the country. Those costs are going to be totally different. So I think that that's something that needs to be communicated very well with each and every client or customer that you have, and all be on the same page on how that's going to be handled, because we all don't want to be in a situation where our guide or our driver is in the middle of Timbuktu and they have to deal with removing a family or an individual off a tour. Nobody wants to be put in that position, but we have to protect the rest of our customers. We definitely. So there's a lot of different ways to look at that. And I think that communication, again, on a case-by-case basis, has got to be very well communicated with you and your customer. And, there's all kinds of waivers being generated and having customers sign waivers and individual passengers sign waivers, and those waivers are bouncing around out there. And I truly think that communication with your customer is key on this situation.
I think it might also be valuable to have a list of where the testing centers may in fact be, and/or hospitals. No different than, if you were on planning an itinerary and you wanted to let the driver know where all the lab stations were. Anybody planning a tour might have a list of where testing stations may be. If you do end up with someone who is ill, at least you could provide the extra service of pointing them in the direction of where they might find some immediate care and/or help. And if they ended up, maybe you might be around a testing station, so they could just taxi over or whatever that solution is going to be to get them somewhere. But I think that's probably not a bad idea to have tour planners have that information, and/or coach companies have that information when they're traveling abroad.
It's a great suggestion. As a matter of fact, even just having that, whether or not it actually at the end of the day ends up working for anyone, I think just having it is a good best practice. Mm-hmm. It's something that the tour operators have in their in their roster of itineraries. They also happen to have a list, depending on where they're going, of testing centers or hospitals. I guess we'll have to leave that to the tour operators to decide if that's something that they really want to do. All right, well, that's about it in terms of how much time we have. We got to nearly every question that we've got. So, you know, in the interest of time, I think I'll wrap it up for today. We do have the tour operator lunch and learn next week on Thursday at 12 o'clock. So encourage everyone to join us for that. And, you know, we did talk as panelists about potentially having a follow-up session. So, you know, for all of the people that have participated today, who have listened in, if you feel a follow-up session down the road is something you would benefit from, let us know. It's certainly something we can very easily put together and keep the conversation going. So thank you to each one of my panelists for being on the call today. You guys did a great job. Thanks, Laura, for all the hard work putting this together. Thanks, Doug and Marty, for contributing tour operator perspective and the opening remarks. And everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks a lot for being here. Take care.
Thank you, OMCA.
Thank you.